Hello.
Hello, is this Nili?
Yep. How's it going?
Good. Hey, I didn't know who that was calling. It said Boston. I thought it was the Celtics. They wanted me to help them out.
Yeah,
I'm just.
you made that half court shot, so now you got to be on the team.
That's what it is. That's it.
That's what it is, right?
They just now figured out that I'm a good player
It,
after all these years.
it happens. Hey, you never know when it happens.
Only took 40 years. No. You know. So you doing okay?
Yeah, I'm good. How about yourself?
Doing good. All right, let's get started here. And but you've got two new singles out, right?
Yes, I do.
And Song for Hope and Lavender Mountains. So what's the connection with those two songs?
So, I mean, they have several. I feel like to me they're both pandemic tunes, as much as they may not sound like it. They were both somehow written pretty early on in the pandemic, and I've kind of thought about that for a while and tried to figure out how come they've both ended up sounding so uplifting and kind of triumphant, but I think it was born out of the need for hope back at that time. So again, that goes back into the titles, and then they're meant to be heard with Song for Hope first, and then Lavender Mountains, not so much to be connected as one long piece, but with Lavender Mountains having such a long intro, it kind of connects, going from mellow solo guitar and going through this transition into the eventual kind of triumphant melodies of Lavender Mountains. So kind of feels to me like a journey that we've all been on, and I feel
Yeah,
safer saying that now that we feel kind of on the other side.
yeah, right. Yeah, you don't want to jinx it, No, tomorrow
I
it's
know.
like
I've been
collapse.
doing all these interviews, and I'm like, oh yeah, we've come full circle. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Then they dropped the bomb the next day, and it was no. I'm just kidding. No. Yeah, those songs. So I've been listening to them and very relaxing, And I've
Oh,
been.
good.
I
I'm
mean,
glad.
I'm just and you can play like pretty much any kind of style. So I'm thinking, man, you go from, playing with fire, and then you play this
Mhm.
relaxing songs. It's like, oh. So I mean, so how do you decide? I guess because of the just the idea of what we've gone through, I guess you wanted more of a relaxing, calm kind of sound on that, right?
I guess so. I mean, for me, it's always kind of the result rather than going into writing with a particular I need to write this kind of thing in mind necessarily, but it's more what I hear in my head and what happens to come to me, and then I try not to judge it or turn it into something that doesn't feel like it should be. So I kind of try and let the music drive the wheel, so to speak, and hopefully land on where I think it wants me to go. So the rest is just kind of like I said, a result of that, and that's where we ended up to be.
Right. Um, the song for Hope though, it's got that, and I was trying to think of what it reminded me of. It kind of reminded me of like remember the Van Halen 316 when he was doing that,
Mm.
kind of like that kind of thing, kind of just.
Oh well, that's a huge compliment. I really appreciate that. Thanks.
And also, I was listening, which I'm a guitar player. I got to give myself a plug, but nowhere like you. I'm this little gnat compared to you. No, but the other song, the Lavender Mountains, another guitar player who I love, Neil Sean. It kind of reminds me of
Mm.
something that Neil Sean would do. Have you ever played with Neil?
No, I mean that would be an amazing honor. I love his playing and stuff, but again, those are compliments because I associate those players with a strong sense of melody and musicality brought to the voice of the guitar. So I appreciate it.
Well, how does that, when you're writing a song, uh, I know certain words convey a special feeling and things like that, but how do you project that feeling from your fingers to a guitar if that's what's on your mind? How do you do that?
Well, for me, the process is more hearing the music in my head first, or at least the hook melody parts of it, or some arrangement ideas, etc. And I like to write sort of away from the instrument in that sense because I feel that it really reflects what I'm really hearing and what I'm really thinking, and it's not distracted by all the gymnastics that you could do on the instrument, I feel like that could be a really quick way to bastardize that.
Yeah.
So once I have a more solid idea of what I want from the song or what it needs, I feel easier about bringing that set of ideas to the instrument and not feeling like I'll go and just ruin the whole thing.
Yeah, I don't think you can ruin anything.
Well, that's very kind, but it's very easy to overplay, and
Yeah.
it's very easy to hide a good melody with overplaying because you can. I always say it's a lot harder for vocalists and for horn players, for example, or anybody who has to breathe to play their instrument. It's a lot harder for them to overplay because they literally can't. At a certain point, they're going to pass out. They're not going to be able to fit more than a certain number of notes into it. But for us, we don't have to stop ever.
Yeah. Right. And,
And so we don't.
and speaking of not stopping, I mean, do you carry your guitar around with you everywhere you go, and you play all the time, or is that just?
Not really. I mean, I feel like I play a lot, but it's more that my life revolves around it so much of the time now. But I'm not, I also, when I'm home, I don't really go anywhere. So
Hey,
it's easy to have a guitar around
right.
wherever I'm at, I guess. But
I know the feeling.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I haven't gone anywhere since the '80s. Hey, but you
I
know,
mean, we're not. I don't really feel like we're missing out. I go to concerts sometimes when I have time, and it's someone that I really care about seeing. But other than that, I don't really feel like I'm missing out on all that much.
yeah. Well, it's all about what you want to do. What makes you happy, and
Yeah, yeah.
um, but yeah, but playing, talking about overplaying and things like that. I mean, but you've got all these skills. You don't have to play uh, really fast, like we were talking about in that song. You can play something really uh, slow and calming,
Mm.
and it means just as much as something that's really, you know, fast and progressive.
Well, thanks. I would hope so. To me, it's music. It doesn't really matter what form it ends up taking. It's all music at the end of the day, and so I try to treat it as such. If it ends up falling into this fast, proggy whatever, then good for that song.
Yeah,
you know?
right. You just let it go, and wherever it goes, right? Just see what
Exactly.
happens. Um, and you play Ibanez guitars. Is that how did you
Yeah.
start playing those guitars, and why did you pick those as opposed to like a Strat or a Les Paul or something?
Well, I mean, I do love a lot of other instruments like Strats, for example, and I've played a bunch of different instruments growing up and figured out that it might be a good idea to try to get my hands used to all types of different necks and instruments and things. And then eventually, I mean, Ibanez was a brand that I was a fan of in general because a lot of my favorite players used Ibanez and it seemed to work for them and it seemed to work for a certain type of playing and type of sound. And it also turned out to be a more versatile brand, and just specific guitars in general are more versatile than I think are given credit for. So for me, it just ended up connecting a lot of dots in a way that just made sense. It made sense for me as a musician, as a fan, as a player, and they've always since provided what I've actually needed to as a tool to go out and do the work. And so with all those things, it's kind of hard to argue with.
Yeah,
As much as I like I said, I like all kinds of different things, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I guess that's right. Um, so how did you? I know you were born in Israel. So how did you get
Hmm.
from there to Boston, and then what in Las Vegas? You've been around.
Yeah,
You've been around, right?
I know, right? It's kind of crazy. I feel like I have so many homes, but so my family moved to the Boston area when I had just turned 12. And obviously it was a big culture shock, but I was I was all up for it. I don't know that that necessarily means that I was ready for it,
Yeah.
but I was up for it. Obviously it was a harder transition than anybody could have necessarily prepared me for. But I'm definitely grateful for it. I've made a lot of good friends. I went to good schools. I had a really good suburban upbringing. You know, my parents tried to give us all the best of all the everything, and I'm super grateful for that. And then that kind of led me to go to Berklee College of Music, and then from there start my career, and that ended up taking me to the West Coast and eventually Vegas
So you were talking
in
about,
a pinch.
oh yeah, just like that. You blinked your eyes. Um,
Yeah, that's what it feels like. Even though it was like, I remember when I started high school, like I literally, I don't know what I thought. I really thought that was not going to end. I don't know if I thought that, because I guess there were always talks about us moving back to Israel, or I don't know. I just did not see the end of that 4 years. I was just
oh
like,
yeah,
that's just like not going to happen. It just seemed like the longest possible stretch of time to get through. And now you look back 4 years and you're like, that was yesterday.
well, you're right. Well,
So,
you could have quit. You could have kept failing. 11th grade or something, and been there for 20 years, and
uh, oh my God, that sounds so much worse. Oh my God.
she's still there after all these years. No, but
Oh,
speaking of
oof.
schooling and college, that Berkeley College. Now,
Mm.
how different is that from like regular school? I mean, do you bring your guitar to class and you take it to your locker? I mean, I mean, how do they teach you like at a Berkeley college?
It is a lot of that. I mean, depends on the class really and your major eventually. You could have a major where you're playing guitar all the time, or you could have a major where you're never touching your instrument. Like you could be a film scoring major and never play your instrument again in
Wow.
some cases. So it just, again, it depends on the class. If it's a performance class, sometimes it is in a classroom setting where you do have your guitars and you do have a bunch of amps around and stuff like that. It's a mix of things. Some classes are just super classroomy. And also, there's something to be said about the fact that I started Berklee in 2006, and it's probably a very different school now. So I don't know if any of my answers are actually current.
Right. There'll be a quiz later to see if you passed the
I'm
test.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah, just
I'm
saying.
trying very hard, trying my best.
Your teachers are listening. Going, hey, she's wrong. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, nah, listen, I don't want to give prospective students some wrong view of the school based on what I remember. So
Right.
take it with a grain of salt, I guess.
Don't quote her on it. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, right. So before you went to Berkeley, did you play a lot when you were younger? How'd you start playing, and how long did it take you to develop those skills?
I mean, I feel like developing skills is kind of a lifelong thing, but I started taking lessons when I was very, very young. But back when I was 7, I took nylon string guitar lessons, let's say, and I had a guitar that was like half or three quarters of the size of a normal nylon string guitar because I was so small and I didn't take it very seriously. And of course, I didn't practice and all those kinds of things. But looking back, I guess I did have some sort of foundation and some sort of knowledge of basic chords and basic reading and basic fundamentals or whatever. And so when I was 12, I was really getting more into guitar music, let's say, and wanted to play electric guitar and started taking lessons on that. And so by early high school, I think I was really committed to practicing and truly inspired by stuff that I wanted to play, and started, really practicing for me. So again, lots of lessons all throughout my life and always been around it type of thing. So
So
however you, yeah.
who were
Hmm?
your influences in your younger years? I know you're from Boston, so I know Extreme
Right.
has to be one of them. So how how'd you first hear about Extreme, and what did you think?
So the funny thing is that that even precedes my time in Boston. That ended up just being a coincidence that seemed fun for me. But my older brother Ethan, who's an amazing guitar player, he was playing and listening to all this stuff, and I kind of was hanging around and thought it was cool and thought that was cool and wanted to know about it, and actually was probably introduced to it through more than words, kind of like everybody else. But then my brother started telling me, oh, you don't even know the rest of the record is so different, but you'll like it, and all that. And then one song at a time, I kind of got hooked on this thing that I realized the rest of that album actually was. And that started a love affair in heavy distortion and funky rhythms, I guess.
Yeah, right. Same here.
So
Yeah, I remember hearing More Than Words, and I was like, man, it sounds like the Beatles. You know,
right,
I thought the whole
right,
album was going to be like these ballads, and I said,
right.
yeah, I can dig that. You know, and then
Yeah, it's still
I
great.
bought the cassette, and it was like funky and get the funk
Uh-huh.
out, and
Right.
and Decadence Dance and all that, and I was like,
Yep.
man,
Yep.
but
I know that
that's wow.
whole intro to that whole album is like, it's just like setting you into a mood that rest of the, I mean, it's such a journey album to me. So,
Yeah, I was impressed. I really liked
mm,
the next album, Three
three
Sides.
sides.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a great one too.
awesome stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're still kicking it, still doing
Oh
good.
my God, killing it.
Man,
Yeah,
yeah, that's man,
absolutely.
gotta love it. I'm glad all these musicians are still around playing those
I
awesome stuff.
know. It makes me so happy.
Exactly. Um, and so tell me about working with Danny Elfman. How's that been?
It's, I mean, it's been incredible. It's hard to say anything else about it. Just I try to soak up all the learning that I can and all the genius that I can, as much time rehearsing as we have, you know. But we have more live stuff coming up early this summer, so it's going to be really fun to do that show again.
So how did you end up getting that gig with Danny?
So a composer named Mikkel Hurwitz, who went to Berkeley with my brother, actually. Uh, our Danny's studio manager, Melissa McGregor, she had asked him for recommendations when they were looking for a band, and he had put my name in the hat somehow. I didn't really know him that well, or even, like, I mean, I guess I must have met him, but since he was my brother's friend, I didn't really know the name, and I just got a call to come audition and stuff, and was very flabbergasted by the idea of that call.
I bet.
The rest is thankfully history, I guess.
Yeah, that's exciting stuff. And I know you play like Michael Jackson songs and things like that too, right?
Right.
That's
Yeah. Yeah.
really amazing. I was watching a video, and I think you were playing like the national anthem at a hockey game or something,
Right.
and you're
Yeah.
playing the "Beat It" solo. I mean,
Mhm. Mhm.
I know it's something to think about. I know it probably makes you think about Michael Jackson. How cool would it have been to play with a guy like that, right? Um, so,
Right.
who are some people that you've thought about you'd like to play with that you haven't played with before?
Uh I mean, there's so many that would be incredible. Uh I have like a lot of not random answers, but answers that are kind of for different reasons and they're musically different. But the two that come to mind that are musically very different from each other are Devin Townsend and Cher.
Awesome. Oh, cool. Well, you got to make that happen. Yeah, let's make that
I
happen.
know, that'd be great.
That's right. So
Cher's got a lot of shows around here in Vegas. Sometimes, I'm not far away.
yeah, right. That there you go. I mean, you can bump into her and say, "Hey, let's get together. Let's play."
I know,
I mean, why not?
right? Never
Um,
know.
you never know. Um, so whenever you're playing and things like that, I don't know. You were talking about writing this stuff. That amazes me too because I was thinking about the words and things like that. But those those little melodies that pop in your head. I mean, are they floating around for a while, or do they you know just come to you, or do you kind of rehash some things you'd been working on, or how does that work? Especially like with your newer stuff. Was that something that you'd been thinking about for a while? Or
It's kind of all of the above. It's over the years I've heard more of the stuff in my head, and the picture's kind of gotten less foggy, so to speak. So maybe that's what it is that it can happen more often and it's a little bit clearer. And then the rest is just kind of a matter of, am I gonna just jot this down? And that's usually in the form of a voice memo where I'll just sing the idea into my phone and take whatever other notes on it that I can hear at the time. once I do that, it's really a question of, okay, am I going to sit down now and really flesh out these ideas and demo them out and take out my guitar and do the whole thing and really start working on it? Or am I going to know that this idea came about and now it's there and it's jotted down and it's not going anywhere, and then I can just pull it up whenever it's time for me to like sit down and work on stuff. So it's usually the latter, unless I really have time. But the idea is to just, if you get the idea, luckily your phone's never really that far away from us these
Yeah.
days, and you
Right.
can make sure not to lose it because you're falling asleep or taking a shower or whatever else you're doing.
Yeah. Right. Carry the guitar, to the shower and no.
Yeah, that's probably not as good of an idea.
Probably, especially if it's plugged up. Don't try it at home.
Oh yeah, definitely don't try
Yeah,
that at home.
please, kids.
Or anywhere else for that matter.
Anywhere that's wet, don't try to plug it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know you can play. You pretty much can play anything. I've seen that. I'm just saying. So you got all these ideas in your head. You've seen all these different other guitarists playing, and you playing a cover of all their songs. So how do you not copy somebody else's with this certain style or lick? If you're when you're coming up with something, when you're so, when you got all these abilities, does sometimes something you'll play and you'll go, that kind of sounds like this. I mean, I don't know. It seems to me it'd be different playing than it would writing a song. I mean, regular with words, you can kind of watch what you're doing, but with notes, it's kind of like in a style. I mean, is there any, way that you see that and you kind of go, I kind of sound like such and such on this song?
Yeah, I mean that happens all the time. It's really hard to not steal in general because it's a language and it's going to have cliches and it's going to have ideas that are recycled and all those things. You kind of have to find your own voice within them. So it's really hard to never say anything that hasn't been said before or suggested before or interpreted that way. It's just part of the deal to me. So I try not to dwell on that too much. But when it comes to the writing, if it sounds familiar to me, I try to do a good job of making sure that I didn't totally steal something, So I'll go back and try to do whatever research I can and be like, okay, does this really remind me of anything? Is there anything that I've been listening to lately that I took this from? And for the most part, if you pass that test, the music gets to stay, you know what I mean? So it depends. I mean, so you don't always catch it in time, or you don't always, there's probably a standard to which you could hold yourself of. You can decide what constitutes plagiarism and what doesn't, you know what I mean? Like it could be pretty close to a lot of people. And so it's really, it's up to the writer. Every case is different, but honestly, I mean, Van Halen stole from those who came before him. Everybody does. It's
That's
inevitable.
right. And then I think Tone Loc stole the little Janie's crying thing. Yeah, but anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
so Steve Vai calls you 10 years from now and says, "Hey, it's like Ed Sheeran with the Marvin Gaye thing. You're like that kind of sounds like that, but you're gonna, like you said, you're gonna copy something. There's not enough notes not to copy.
Yeah, I mean, and there's if you want to talk about the like legal aspects of it, there's certain set. I mean, there's like a number of measures and number of notes that have to be the same exact thing before it could be constitute as stealing. Like it's very it's it seems a little weird to put music to those variables, but
Yeah,
I guess if you have to test something out in a legal situation like that, then you have to have some sort of rule. But uh, it leaves a lot to play with.
yeah. Well, what do you think about like the AI creating music and stuff like that? Do you think that's going to
Uh,
take the place of creators?
uh, I don't know that it'll ever really take the place of a truly good musician. I kind of I don't think that even like the best algorithms and the best guessing games of something that's going to sound pleasant to the ear can truly like really get so good that you're replacing the humanness of a true musician. Maybe you will get some good coincidences out of it, but I don't know.
Yeah, I totally agree because I mean it's like there's the human side. The whole point of it is creating. If you're a human, and it's
Yeah,
it's harder and
exactly.
it's real and
And
it's from the heart.
exactly. And so if even if you're going to get something that sounds nice, how can you have emotion in something that came from not a human?
Yeah, right.
Like it literally can't. It came from an inanimate object. It's not going to have emotion.
Of course. It's going to be
So
just dull. I guess you'll have like R2D2 on stage or something.
well, that would actually be pretty
That
cool.
would be cool. Hey, that's what I was telling somebody the other day. I mean,
Yeah.
it would be cool. I think it just needs to be entertainment, not like I'm going to
Yeah,
go
yeah.
buy this
No, but
album.
you know what? It would be cool if it was actually R2D2. Like that's what I'm saying. It's like if it was R2D2,
Yeah.
that I can get with, but we're not going to see that. So
Yeah, right. Speaking of fake and being on stage, I need you to play for me and pretend that I'm playing in full on of people, and we can call it Nili Vanilli. Is that good?
oh
No,
man.
no. Okay.
Oof.
Darn. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's all right. It's all
Forgive me.
right. I appreciate it. I mean, listen, it was right there,
It
right?
was just I just had to throw it out there. Yeah.
Oh man.
The listeners are going to be dropping like flies after this. So,
Oh boy.
man, I tell you. So these songs that you've got, the new songs, are there going to be some more songs coming up?
Yeah, I mean they're gonna be part of a full my next full album whenever that is going to be. That nobody can really say, but they do feel like part of a bigger story, and obviously my writing's not going to end here, so to be continued.
Yeah, that's a good thing. It's not going to stop. Just suddenly
No,
you're
of
not going to
course not.
quit or and like you know start weaving baskets or something instead of playing guitar.
Right, right.
Yeah, right. Well, you also you said you got some shows coming up. What kind of shows? You said you got a whole bunch of things happening there. Or how's that gonna? What's gonna be happening in the future for you?
Well, yeah, I have a bunch of stuff coming up. I have some stuff with my original music. I have some Cirque du Soleil shows that I'm doing, and then a tour with Death Clock later on this summer. It's starting with Baby Metal and Jason Richardson opening. So I will be playing in Death Clock and doing the very heavy death metal thing
Awesome.
for a couple of months. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
I know you can do it. I believe in you.
Thanks.
um, and as far as the future, what do you set goals for yourself? Like at this age or this time, I want to be doing this or I want to do that, or you just kind of take it day by day.
Uh, I mean, I feel like in this kind of industry, if you're putting yourself on a limit of doing something by a certain time, it's a little, I don't know if it's more harm than it's worth, but I try to set goals, but also be realistic about how everything is, and the fact that it's a marathon and not a sprint is kind of the biggest lesson to me.
Yeah. Um, and also, you teach guitar, right? Don't you have like videos and things like that to show people how to play?
I do have a bunch of instructional things out. Unfortunately, I don't really have the time for much of that these days. So it's just kind of whatever has to take priority right now is the live stuff.
Hey, or somebody can just stare at your fingers and try to, see what you're doing.
Yeah, it could be. Could be.
Or slow it down or something. I don't know. Oh yeah. Speaking of which, just I remember years ago, I was in the front row of Van Halen, 1995 in Pensacola, Florida, and there was Eddie Van Halen about 10 feet away from me. One of the
Oh, that's incredible.
greatest nights of my life, and I watched him
Oh,
play
that's
all those solos,
definitely incredible.
and that just that just blew my mind. I mean, just to see that. So I mean, and just thinking, even guitarists like you, I'm glad you're keeping it going. That those just awesome sounds on the guitar are just so amazing. I think
Thank
sometimes
you.
people overlook that. That's it's not only just so much talent; it's a beautiful thing. And I know for me, because I play, it's something that just you never get tired of listening to. Honestly, I could listen to your music like forever. I mean, I'm just saying it's some good stuff. Um,
Oh, thank you so much.
and I hope everybody gets a chance to check it out. Where can they find out more about you and everything like that?
Well, I mean, a bunch of places. You can go to my website. That's nilibrosh.com. So Nilibrosh. And you'll find all the live dates, all the music videos, the rest of my music, everything else that I'm doing. And on the socials as well. It's at Nili Brosh on Instagram and YouTube, and then Nili Brosh Music on Facebook. And that's about it.
Awesome. And hey, I always notice that you smile a lot whenever you're playing. That's a good, you're having fun, right? That's
That's right. Yeah, of course.
so I'm just saying that's what it's all about, enjoying what you're
It
doing.
sure is.
Well,
It sure is.
I appreciate you talking to me today, and
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me.
yes, I no problem. I'm in awe of you. Let's just say that.
Oh,
Just
thank
amazing.
you.
I put you up there with Neil. Hey, just
Oh,
I'm just
well,
saying.
thank you so much.
But I hope.
That means a lot.
Well, I appreciate you, and I hope all the best to you. And looking forward. Maybe I can see you out there somewhere one day. I hope.
That'll be great. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Well, you have a good day. Thanks a lot.
You too.
All right. Bye.